So with the signing into law of the Film and Publication Amendment Act, I beg your pardon, social media users could be fined or jailed for disseminating inappropriate content. The law was enacted by President Cyril Ramaphosa and took effect from the 1st of March. It states that no user through any medium or platform can send messages that are of a distasteful nature, such as sexually explicit images and videos without a person's consent. For more on this, we're joined by my broadband editor, Jan Vermeulen. Jan, thank you very much for joining us. So what do we need to know about these new regulations? How do they impact you and I?
Yeah, sure thing. So it's a complicated set of affairs, because for all the good that it does double the amount of bad. So while, you know, the revenge porn provisions and the provisions on child sexual abuse material and even just child abuse material is ostensibly good, that stuff honestly should not be in anything to do with the Film and Publications Board. That is handled by the Cybercrimes Act, and I would argue that that the Cybercrimes Act is a very good place to put it. But the Film and Publications Board, with this set of laws, with this Amendment Act, has sought to expand its power and expand its mandate, and there's some real concerns for abuse, for limiting freedom of expression in South Africa. Now, they've assured that that's not going to happen, but lawyers around the country from different firms have said if you go by the letter of the law, it doesn't matter what the FPB says today. What about what the FPB says in 15, 20 years, when all the people that are working there now are promoted out or leave or whatever the case might be? What's the FPB of the future going to do with the power that's given to it in this act right now? And so there's some genuine concerns about the impact on freedom of speech in South Africa. And then there's also still a lot of open questions about what this means for people who make money off of social media, people who make money producing YouTube videos, TikTok videos, or live streaming on Twitch. The FPB has not been answering those questions directly, unfortunately. And so it might be that those social media influencers will have to register with the FPB, or perhaps if they're with an affiliated network, so if YouTube pays a fee to the FPB, then they don't have to be classified, and then you're okay. They're not really answering those questions directly, which has left people with a lot more questions than answers today, even after a media briefing.
You speak of the media briefing, an official speaking of what they call online harm, saying that South Africa is not the exception to the rule. I'd like to pick up on the issue of abuse that could possibly take place that you point out. In what form?
Sure. So the simplest thing that the law allows for is anybody to complain about any piece of content. Now, the FPB will say, no, you know, we've got this thing about non-commercial distributors. But there's this part in the Act which lets anyone complain about any piece of content, non-commercial or not, under the auspices of hate speech or incitement. Now, there might be legitimate cases of hate speech or incitement, but someone might exploit loopholes in the law and in those definitions to try and suppress speech that they don't like, to say, no, but that's hate, that's incitement. And now the FPB has set themselves up as arbiters of what is hate speech and what is incitement, essentially of what is protected speech in South Africa. And even our courts struggle with that. They grapple with that every time a new case is brought before them. The FPB is not equipped to handle this. When I asked them about it, they said that they'll be referring to case law, well-established rulings made by the courts in South Africa, but these are hairy issues that judges with a tremendous amount of experience find difficult to adjudicate over. And so to have an enforcement committee at the FPB be ruling on these matters is incredibly concerning.
On that hate speech matter, it includes words that could reasonably be construed to demonstrate a clear intention to be harmful. And this word intention is what stood out for me, because if I'm sending a picture of a friend of mine to a group on WhatsApp, for instance, and then she turns around and she says, well, I don't like how I look here, you know, and I'm like, that wasn't my intention to embarrass you or to, you know, distribute this as explicit content. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but in terms of this issue of, you know, them stating during the briefing that internationally we're not the exception to the rule, yet you speak of how not ready we were to actually adopt this piece of legislation. What was the pressure?
Right. So a part of it is that the FBB wants the money from charging large online content platforms like Netflix, like Amazon, like Twitch, like YouTube, TikTok, whoever. They will essentially be charging them a fee to allow them to self-classify. So the FBB, whose only job used to be putting age restrictions on things, are now going to outsource the giving of age restrictions of things on the internet, and instead do this other stuff, is what it looks like to me. But this Amendment Act, chiefly for the FBB, provides them a legal basis on which to charge money to these big online platform providers, Facebook as well, which also publishes a lot of video. And I would imagine via Facebook, Instagram, and maybe even WhatsApp, we'll see how far the FBB goes, so that they will self-classify their content. And so that's really what, in my head, that's really what this is about, is a way for the FBB, and that's the rush to get this out, is the sooner this gets out, the sooner they have a legal leg to stand on to say, you need to pay us money for the privilege to self-classify, otherwise you're in violation of South African law. And also, while the rest of the world is grappling with the issue of child sexual abuse material on the internet, on other prohibited content, whether it's terrorists cutting people's heads off and all kinds of other really heinous video that's posted, and other content that's posted online, it's disingenuous for them to say that the rest of the world, the rest of the world's age restriction agencies are trying to set themselves up as censors and arbiters over protected speech in that country. That's not happening all over the world.
Was there a public participation process here? And maybe I ask in terms of whether, as South Africans, are we as involved, as enraged as we'd like to be at times?
Yes, so there was a public participation process. It was completely railroaded. Unfortunately, it was quite active, thanks to the participation of organizations like Newzroom Afrika. They signal boosted it and got a lot of people involved. There was a lot of comments, legal experts providing detailed feedback on trying to get this law in better shape. I mean, when a legal professional doesn't mince words and tells you on the record, this is a terribly written piece of legislation, then you know, when they're not even trying to be diplomatic about it, then you know that there are problems. But this piece of law started under the Zuma administration, and it was just completely railroaded. None of the feedback, from what we could see, was really taken on board. Maybe one or two technicalities here and there where they said, listen, you can't use this definition, you have to use that definition. Those things were changed. But the salient problems with the Act, like this issue where you can now complain to the FBB to have them make a judgment call over whether something is hate speech or not, that stayed in there. And so, there was the full public participation process. It went through the National Council of Provinces, National Assembly, and then landed on the President's desk for assent. And President Ramaphosa signed it in October 2019, and I don't know why. With so many problems with this law, he should have kicked it back to Parliament for them to completely rework it.
I mean, the fine here is 150,000 rand and imprisonment for a period not exceeding 2 years.
Yes, so the penalties are quite stiff. And technically speaking, once again, until we get more clarity from the FPP on how exactly this is going to work, everybody who has revenue share with YouTube, so if you're a YouTuber that's making a little bit of money from your YouTube videos, I mean, are you now a commercial distributor? They're not clarifying that point. And that means that if you upload and there's no deal in place between YouTube and the FPB, you're a criminal by default. And then it's at the FPB's own discretion whether to prosecute you or not. And so that's just a terrible situation to be in. And part of the reason South Africans are losing respect for the rule of law in this country is because when you are told that effectively you're a criminal and you can be prosecuted at any point depending on the whims of a government agency that's unelected, that's deployed by ministers, then I think it's justifiable for people to be upset and to ask questions about how this law came to be, why it was pushed through, what the intentions are here, and what possible security they can provide that it's not going to be abused in future when all the people that are behind this are long gone.
This is also curious. We are hoping to get response from the relevant authorities. We're still petitioning them here on the channel. On a lighter note, before we let you go, that background, that Zoom background, or is it real? In the middle of nowhere but everywhere?
That is real. I'm standing outside my office because it's better acoustics here. But yeah, that is absolutely real.
Let's let you go and take a breath and enjoy the view. Thank you for sharing it with us. Jan Vermeulen is the editor at My Broadband.